Hello again. I realise that it might seem a little ill-mannered of me to talk about the American presidency, since I am myself not American. My excuse is that although having a buffoon for the Prime Minister of Britain is largely a domestic matter, having little effect upon the rest of the world, mercifully, the American president is, by contrast, the most powerful man in the world and represents not only his own nation, but the very principle of democracy in the world. Or so it should be. Something which I must make clear is that I feel that there to be all the difference in the world between a good man and a good president. Just as being an intellectual is not necessary for the role, neither is personal integrity and moral strength. Take Jimmy Carter, for instance, who was a very good man from an ethical perspective, but at the same time a very bad president. More recently, Obama was a principled intellectual, but that did not stop the Iranians running rings around him in the negotiations relating to nuclear weapons. Even his best friends, on the other hand, might perhaps hesitate before describing Donald Trump as an intellectual, but he was certainly able to spot when America was being taken for a ride and so pulled out of the treaty which Obama had signed. Unlike Jimmy Carter, Trump was a bad man but a good president. All of which brings me to the subject of this video, which is how soon Kamala Harris will be replacing Joe Biden as president, and also why the press and media in general do not seem all that keen to point out what is obvious to everybody else in the world, that Biden is failing fast. He puts me in mind of some inappropriate old relative at a wedding. You know the kind I mean. He stands up to deliver a speech and then he forgets that he's at a wedding and starts rambling on about something else entirely, or gets all his words jumbled up so that the guests start stirring uneasily and exchanging meaningful glances with each other. Later on, your teenage daughter comes up to you and she's upset because she says that old Uncle Joe has been sniffing her hair or licking her arm or something similarly inappropriate and odd. You have to explain gently that old Joe doesn't mean any harm, but he's not really well. There's this disease, darling. I don't know if you've ever heard of something called Alzheimer's. As I say, for me, the puzzling thing is that everybody in the mainstream media, apart from the Australians, of course, are being very tactful about the increasingly obvious frailty and bizarre behaviour of the man who has the ability to launch Armageddon and destroy the world. This would make a great Hollywood blockbuster, but it's not altogether comfortable watching it unfold in real time in the actual world in which we live. If Joe Biden were to be carted off to a rest home, then the office of president would devolve upon the vice president, Kamala Harris. This situation arises from time to time, most recently I think with Gerald Ford, who replaced Nixon. Lyndon Johnson famously remarked of Ford that he was so dumb that he couldn't fart and chew gum at the same time. We must hope that Harris is a little sharper than this. Her mother is Indian and her father Jamaican, which will immediately make her the darling of the liberal left. I say this because the left are far more obsessed with skin colour and ethnicity than right-wing people these days. After Obama's first term, it was pretty obvious that although he was a decent, intelligent and well-meaning man, he was a complete dead loss as a president. Even so, there was still unbounded enthusiasm for him to get in again. I was puzzled about this, and when I asked supporters in this country why they thought he was a good candidate, it turned out that they had simply been hypnotised by the colour of his skin. It was the fact that he was black which mattered, not that he was useless. I shall be curious to see how Harris makes out as president, if, as seems more and more likely, she ends up in the White House. She probably he could not make a worse job of being president than the present incumbent.